The ranch was dying in silence. Caleb Ruhr stood in a frozen yard at dawn, staring at the paper nailed to the bunkhouse door. The foreclosure notice flapped in the wind, its edges already curling from the cold. 9 days. That's all the bank had given him. 9 days until everything his father built, everything Caleb had bled for, would belong to someone else. Christmas was 5 days away. Not that it mattered. The cattle were gaunt, ribs showing through dull hides. The windmill creaked with every gust, one blade cracked clean through. The well pump groaned each time he worked the handle. Metal grinding against metal like it was begging to quit. Caleb understood the feeling, but quitting early felt worse than losing slowly. So he worked. Dark to dark fence posts, feed bags, anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from counting days. The land stretched out around him, brown and brittle under a gray sky. It used to mean something. Now it just felt like a weight he couldn't put down. He'd made a decision 3 weeks ago, a desperate one. The kind you make when loneliness becomes another debt you can't pay. He'd placed an ad in the territorial paper. Land, roof, future. Simple words for a complicated lie. He hadn't mentioned the rot underneath. Hadn't mentioned the bank or the debt or the buyer circling like a crow waiting for something to die. Harlan Pike, cashery and patient, Pike had made an offer twice already. Each time with that smile that said he knew how this would end. Caleb had refused both times, but the third offer was coming. He could feel it. The stage was due today. Caleb walked to the barn, boots crunching through frost. Inside, the air smelled of old hay and rust. He checked the horses, fed what little grain he had left, then stood there in the dim light, trying to figure out what to say to a woman who thought she was coming to a working ranch instead of a graveyard. By noon, he was waiting at the edge of town. The wind bit through his coat. Other men stood nearby, waiting for freight or family. Caleb kept to himself. When the stage finally rolled in, dust rising behind it, his chest tightened. The door opened. The woman who stepped down wasn't what he'd imagined. She didn't look like hope or rescue or any of the things he'd let himself picture in weak moments. She looked tired. Her coat was patched at the elbows, her boots scuffed and worn. She carried one trunk herself and didn't wait for the driver or anyone else to help. She set it down and looked at him. "I'm Maeve Collins," she said. Her voice was flat, cautious. No warmth, no expectation. "I suppose you're Caleb." He nodded, stepped forward, took the trunk without a word. It was heavier than it should have been, packed tight with whatever life she'd brought with her. They rode back in silence. Maeve sat beside him on the wagon, hands folded in her lap, eyes scanning the horizon. Caleb tried to see the ranch the way she must be seeing it. The sagging fence line, the empty corral, the forge by the barn, cold and red with rust. The shed with half its roof caved in. She didn't say anything, just looked. The way someone looks at a wound before deciding how deep it goes. When they reached the house, Caleb carried her trunk inside. The cabin was clean but bare. He'd done what he could. It wasn't enough. Maeve stood in the doorway, taking it all in. "Thank you," she said quietly. Caleb nodded and left her alone. That night he would tell her the truth. Caleb waited until after supper to tell her. They sat across from each other at the small table. Tin plates between them. He'd cooked what he could. Beans, hard bread, coffee that tasted like burnt wood. Maeve ate without comment. She hadn't unpacked, hadn't asked questions. Just moved through the evening like someone conserving energy for whatever came next. The lamp flickered between them. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Caleb set down his cup. "There's something you need to know," he said. Maeve looked at him, waited. "The ranch is failing," he said. "It has been 2 years. Drought took the grass, lost half the herd, couldn't pay the hands, so they left. Couldn't fix what broke. The bank gave me until the 28th. 9 days from now. After that, it's foreclosure." He watched her face. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. "There's a man," Caleb continued. "Harlan Pike, he's been waiting for this. He'll buy it from the bank for half what it's worth and turn it into part of his empire. He's been patient. He knows I'm drowning." Maeve's hands wrapped tighter around her cup. "You should have said," she said finally. Her voice was calm, but something sharp lived underneath it. "In the ad, in the letters, you should have told me. You wouldn't have come." "I still might not have," she said. "But at least I'd have known what I was walking into." Caleb felt the shame rise in his chest. She was right. He'd lied by omission, brought her here under false pretenses because he was too proud to admit the truth and too desperate to face it alone. "I'm sorry," he said. Maeve stood, carried her plate to the basin, stood there with her back to him, looking out the dark window at nothing. "What were you hoping for?" she asked. "That I'd fix it, that a wife would somehow make the debt disappear." "I don't know," Caleb said. "I wasn't thinking straight, haven't been for a while." She turned. Her eyes were hard now. No softness left. "I came here because I had nowhere else to go." She said. "My father died 6 months ago. The shop went to creditors. I had a trunk, $40, and no family. Your ad promised something stable. A partnership. That's what you called it in the letter." Partnership. Caleb remembered writing that word. It had felt true at the time. Now it just felt like another lie. "I meant it," he said. "Did you?" Maeve crossed her arms. "Or did you just need someone to witness the end?" The words hit harder than he expected. Maybe because they were true. Maybe he had wanted someone else there when it all finally collapsed. Someone to share the weight of losing. "I don't know what I wanted," Caleb admitted. "But I know what I need. I need to save this place and I can't do it alone." Maeve studied him. The lamplight carved shadows across her face. She looked older than her years, worn down by something deeper than travel. "I'm not a miracle," she said. "I can work. I'm good with my hands, but I can't save a sinking ship with 9 days and no tools." "I know. Then why am I here?" Caleb didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound selfish. Maeve sighed. "Sit back down. I'll stay through Christmas," she said. "After that, if this place goes under, we figure out what's next. Separately or together. But no more lies. If we're doing this, we do it honestly." Caleb nodded. "Honest," he said. They sat in silence. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the lamp burned low. Neither of them knew if 9 days was enough time to save anything. But the terms were set. Morning would come early. Caleb woke before dawn to the sound of metal on metal. He lay still for a moment, disoriented. The cabin was cold. The fire burned down to embers. The sound came again, a deliberate strike, clear and rhythmic. He pulled on his boots and coat and stepped outside. The sky was still dark, stars fading at the edges. Smoke rose from the forge. Caleb crossed the yard. The forge glowed orange in the pre-dawn light, heat wavering in the frozen air. Maeve stood at the anvil, hammer in hand, striking a piece of iron that glowed white-hot. She'd rolled up her sleeves despite the cold. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She didn't look up when he approached. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Working," she said. She lifted the iron with tongs, examined it, then thrust it back into the coals. The bellows wheezed as she pumped air into the fire. Sparks flew upward into the dark. Caleb looked around. She'd cleaned the forge. The tools that had been scattered and rusted were now organized on a bench she must have dragged from the shed. The firebox had been rebuilt with bricks she'd scavenged from somewhere. The coal pile, which he thought was too damp to burn, was now feeding a steady flame. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. "Since 4. Maeve. I'm a blacksmith," she said, cutting him off. She pulled the iron out again and laid it on the anvil. The hammer came down hard, shaping the metal with quick, precise blows. "My father ran a shop outside Cheyenne, trained me from the time I could lift a hammer. When the railroad came through, they built their own smithy, undercut his prices. He died trying to compete." She struck again. The metal bent to her will. "I kept the shop going for 2 years after," she continued. "Did everything. Horseshoes, tools, wagon repairs. But a woman running a forge, people didn't trust it. It didn't matter how good the work was. They took their business elsewhere. Eventually, I couldn't pay the rent." Caleb watched her work. Every movement was practiced efficiently. No wasted motion. She wasn't experimenting. She knew exactly what she was doing. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Maeve finally stopped, set down the hammer, looked at him. "You didn't ask what I could do," she said. "You asked if I'd come. So I came." The words sat between them. Caleb felt something shift in his chest. Pride maybe, or shame. He'd been so focused on his own failure that he hadn't considered what she might bring beyond companionship. He'd expected a wife, not an answer. "What are you making?" he asked. "He pins," Maeve said. "Saw half the doors in this place hanging crooked. Figured I'd start there. After that, I'll fix the well pump, then the windmill bearing, then whatever else is broken." She picked up the hammer again. "People pay for good iron work," she said. "Farmers need plow blades sharpened, tools repaired. Teamsters need axles fixed. There's a market here, Caleb. You've just been too busy trying to run a cattle ranch to see it." Caleb stared at her at the forge. At the work already done in a few hours since midnight. We have 9 days, he said. Then we'd better not waste them. She turned back to the anvil and struck. The sound rang out across the empty yard, sharp and sure, a declaration. The ranch had been silent for so long that the noise felt like something waking up. Caleb stood there another moment, then went to the barn. If she was going to work, so was he. He had fences to mend, tools to sharpen, accounts to organize. If they were going to fail, they'd fail working. But maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't fail at all. The sun broke over the horizon, and the forge burned bright. They fell into a rhythm that felt more like survival than partnership. Maeve worked the forge from dawn until her hands cramped. Caleb hauled wood, cut fence posts, patched the barn roof where winter had torn through. They moved around each other like strangers sharing a lifeboat. Careful, efficient, conserving words for when they mattered. By the second day, a farmer named Dietrich showed up with a broken plow blade. "Heard there's a smith working out here," he said, eyeing Maeve with open skepticism. "There is," Maeve said. She took the blade, examined the crack, and quoted a price. Dietrich hesitated, looked at Caleb. "She knows what she's doing," Caleb said. The farmer paid half up front, came back the next afternoon. The blade was fixed, not just welded, but reinforced. The edge rehardened and sharpened to a clean line. Dietrich tested it with his thumb, nodded slowly, and paid the rest. "I'll mention it to others," he said. Word spread the way it does in a sparse country, slow but certain. A teamster brought a bent wagon axle. A rancher needed horseshoes. A woman from town came with a broken door latch and left with 2 new ones, better than the original. Maeve charged fair rates, not cheap ones. People paid, some came back with more work. Caleb kept a ledger, wrote down every job, every payment. The numbers climbed, but not fast enough. He did the math each night by lamplight, subtracting what they owed from what they'd made. The gap was still too wide. On the 4th day, Harlan Pike rode up. Caleb was hauling scrap iron to the forge when he saw the horse, a tall begeling, groomed and expensive. Pike sat easy in the saddle, hat tilted back, smiling like he'd come to watch something amusing. "Heard you've got a forge running," Pike said. He dismounted, looped the res over the fence. "Interesting choice." Caleb set down the iron. Maeve kept working, hammer striking steady behind him. "We're busy," Caleb said. Pike walked closer, hands in his pockets. He was younger than Caleb, cleaner, well-fed. Everything about him said money and patience. "The bank will take this place in 5 days," Pike said. His voice was conversational, almost friendly. "I'll buy it after. Save yourself the embarrassment, Caleb. Sell to me now. I'll give you enough to start over somewhere else." "We're not selling." Pike's smile widened. "You think a few horseshoes are going to cover what you owe?" Behind them, Maeve's hammer went silent. Pike turned, noticing her for the first time. His eyes moved over her, the soot on her face, the leather apron, the hammer in her hand. "Didn't figure you for a working woman," he said. Maeve set the hammer down deliberately. Walked forward until she stood beside Caleb. She looked at Pike with the same expression she'd used to evaluate bad metal. "Didn't figure you for anything useful," she said. Pike's smile faltered, then returned harder. "Cute," he said. He looked at Caleb. "Do you think this changes anything? You're playing for survival. I'm offering you a way out." "We don't need your way out," Caleb said. "You will," Pike said. He walked back to his horse, swung up into the saddle. 5 days, Caleb. Then it's not your choice anymore." He rode off slowly like a man with all the time in the world. Caleb's hands were fists at his sides. The old anger was back, the kind that made him want to swing first and think later. The kind that had gotten him into trouble before. Maeve touched his arm just once. "Light. He's trying to rattle you," she said. "Don't let him." Caleb breathed, nodded. They went back to work. That night, the ledger showed progress. Not enough, but progress for days left. By Christmas Eve, Caleb was running on anger and coffee that tasted like dirt. He hadn't slept more than 4 hours in the past 3 nights. Every muscle ached. His hands were raw from work, knuckles split from cold and friction. The ledger sat open on the table, numbers that refused to add up to salvation. They'd made money, more than he'd thought possible in 5 days, but it wasn't enough. Not even close. The debt was a wall they kept throwing themselves against. Maeve sat across from him, steam rising from her own cup. Her face was drawn, shadows under her eyes. She'd been working 18-hour days at the forge, barely stopping to eat. Her hands were bandaged where blisters had opened and bled. "We're short," Caleb said. He didn't need to say how much. They both knew. "I know." Outside, the wind howled. Christmas morning, the bank would come. The law would come. It would all be over. Maeve sat down her cup. "There's the Christmas market," she said. Caleb looked up. "What?" "Red Bluff. They hold a market on Christmas Eve. Runs until midnight. People come from 3 counties. Ranchers, miners, families. They buy gifts, supplies, and specialty goods." She paused. "Iron work." Caleb shook his head. "That's 50 miles. We'd need to leave now. And there's a stall fee. Transport costs. If we don't sell, if we don't go," Maeve interrupted, "we lose quiet. At least this way we go down fighting." He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it was too risky, too desperate. But what did they have left except desperate? "What would you bring?" he asked. Maeve stood, walked to the corner where she'd been stacking finished work. She pulled back a tarp. Underneath were pieces Caleb hadn't seen. Custom iron latches with decorative scroll work. A plow blade she'd hardened using some technique he didn't understand. The metal dark and strong. A gate hinge shaped like cottonwood leaves, detailed and beautiful. Hooks, hinges, tools, all of it crafted with a precision that went beyond utility. "When did you make these?" Caleb asked. "Nights," Maeve said, "after you went to sleep." He looked at her at the exhaustion carved into her face, the determination that kept her upright. She'd been working while he slept. Building inventory for a gamble she hadn't even mentioned until now. "Why didn't you say something?" "Because you would have told me not to waste time on fancy pieces." Maeve said. "You would have said we needed to focus on practical work." "And you would have been right. But practical work wasn't going to get us there. Caleb, we needed something more." She was right. He would have said exactly that. "If this fails," Caleb said slowly, "we lose faster. We'll have nothing left. If we don't try," Maeve said, "we lose anyway. At least this way, we're in control." Caleb looked at the pieces again. They were good. Better than good. The kind of work people would stop to admire. The kind they'd pay premium prices for. He nodded. "We'll need the wagon, blankets to wrap the pieces. Food for the trip already packed," Maeve said. Of course, she had. They loaded the wagon by lamplight, working quickly despite the fatigue. Every piece wrapped carefully, secured against the journey. The horses sensed the urgency, stamping and blowing steam into the frozen air.